So guys, it looks like we finally have an update on the Warhammer series and it's moving forward at Amazon. I could not be more excited for this. We have my boy Henry Cavill, Superman himself, leading the charge, producing the series, and I think he's having the lead role in the series as well. They're building out this universe. I believe they're making series and movies here, so it's going to be a pretty expansive universe with this Warhammer kind of project. This is kind of crazy though. I can't wait to see what they're going to do with this. It's going to look insane in live action, and sign me up. There's going to be so many millions of Warhammer fans all around the world that are going to be really excited to see what Amazon can do with this. So let's jump into these details. Let's break it down, and we have an exclusive Instagram post from Henry Cavill himself giving us an update about some of the details we can expect about this show as well. So plenty of goodies here to jump into. This comes to us from comicbookmovie.com. So, Warhammer 40,000 Cinematic Universe moving forward with Man of Steel star Henry Cavill leading the charge. Yeah, so we got the initial announcement, what was it, a few months ago now? And we heard that there was kind of like rumblings about this. We had an initial announcement, and then we didn't hear any updates or news for quite a while. And a lot of people were kind of worried that maybe the project wasn't going ahead, that it had stalled, that something had gone wrong. But now, with this official update that is moving forward, you know, we've got the green light. This is fantastic news. So, let's jump into these details here. Games Workshop and Amazon have announced that they've finalized the deal to create a Warhammer 40,000 cinematic universe overseen by Justice League and The Witcher star Henry Cavill. We're talking about Henry Cavill here, right? Remember, guys, this is the guy who almost lost out on the Superman role because he was busy doing a dungeon raid on the Warhammer video game. He almost lost out on Superman, the role, because he got a call from Zack Snyder and he was busy doing a raid on the Warhammer game.
You weren't home, you were home, but you were playing World of Warcraft, and the phone rings, and you're like, I'll get that later?
Absolutely, I'll get that later. And I was playing, it was an important part of a particular dungeon that I was going through, and it's cool now that I'm Superman.
That's how much of a nerd this guy is, and if you wanted anybody in the world to lead the charge on this project, Henry Cavill would absolutely be your guy to do it. So, it was last December when we first learned of plans for the two companies to spend a year figuring out creative guidelines for the films and television series to be developed by Amazon. Really, it was last December. Wow, I thought it was only a few months ago. Okay, I was way off on that. So the news was met with excitement, but it was cautioned that the deal would only proceed if the creative guidelines are mutually agreed between Games Workshop and Amazon. Yeah, when it comes to the Warhammer IP, Games Workshop are very strict on what companies can do when they're representing the Warhammer property. Obviously, the Space Marine 2 game recently came out, and some of the developers in interviews behind the Space Marine 2 game, they've come out and said that the reason that certain armors and certain factions aren't within the game is because Games Workshop have a very strict set of guidelines, a very strict kind of sandbox that they, and the law as well. They're very strict with the law. So there's only certain things that Games Workshop will allow developers to do with their properties, and they're very strict on the law, the characters, you know, the armor, how it's represented in a video game or live action. So working out this deal between Amazon and Games Workshop, I can understand why it's taken so long, trying to figure out, you know, what they can use, what they can't use, working out, you know, the sandbox in which they can play in, trying to figure out all those kind of legal issues around representing the IP. That can be a pretty messy thing, but it sounds like they have it figured out now, which is great. So, where are we here? So, in a new statement, Games Workshop confirmed that both parties managed to get a deal across the finish line in the nick of time. Quote, "It's official, Games Workshop and Amazon Studios have finalized their deal. The creative guidelines are now down." Yeah, like I was saying, the creative guidelines about what they can use, what they can't use on screen, and how to represent the lore. Again, very strict policy when it comes to Games Workshop and their Warhammer universe. And we're set to bring Warhammer to the screen. It might have taken a year, but it was a year well spent. And what fun sifting through the enormity of the Warhammer 40,000 universe, debating characters, story arcs, and the thematic grit that underpins it all. Of course, as with all carefully crafted things, this all takes time, and trust us when we say everyone is laser focused on getting it all just right. So it sounds like they've spent an entire year nailing down the lore, the characters, the creative guidelines, all the kind of legal, you know, bureaucracy of the entire project, and it sounds like they've hammered it out, no pun intended. But yeah, that sounds great, and now we can move on to the creative aspect where they can start pre-production, they can start ramping it up, you know, figuring out which stories we're going to follow, which characters we're going to follow, and all that good stuff that obviously goes into the pre-production, and then they can get on with the fun stuff and start shooting this series at some point. So, no script has been written at this stage, and we don't have any details about the story Amazon and Games Workshop plans to tell. Unsurprisingly, it will be some years before the first of these Warhammer 40,000 projects reaches our screens. So yeah, unfortunately, it's going to be a very long wait until we get that first series or movie or whichever they plan to put out first. But hopefully it'll be worth the wait, because we've seen a lot of fan kind of Warhammer movies on YouTube that look incredible. So imagine what a company like Amazon, like $1 trillion company, the amount of money they can spend on this, and the amount of you know, CGI and the kind of like the acting from Henry Cavill. Imagine the production and the cinematography that Amazon can put into this show, and it could be something absolutely special, incredible, and it could just be something amazing. So we have to wait a long time, but it's absolutely going to be worth it in my opinion. As well as producing, Megafan Cavill will also star in the series. We expect to be built around him. On Instagram, he shared the following with fans. So this is where we're going to go over to Instagram, check out this exclusive post from Henry Cavill himself, and see what he had to say in this update regarding the Warhammer project. So going over here to Henry Cavill's Instagram, he says the following. To celebrate some Warhammer news, I decided to make a pilgrimage to the very first place I brought Warhammer models over 30 years ago, the little shop on my home island of Jersey. That's pretty cool, going back to where you used to buy stuff as a kid. I do that sometimes. I go into my local town centre. There's still a Games Workshop here. And sometimes I revisit the old neighbourhood where I used to buy Tyranids growing up. I used to go there after school. And sometimes I go in there just to reminisce about old times. So, yeah, I absolutely know where Henry Cavill's coming from here. So he goes on to say following, quote, my incredible team and I, alongside the brilliant minds at Games Workshop, have been working away in concept rooms, breaking down approaches to the enormity and magnificence of the Warhammer world. Together, we've been sifting through the plethora of incredible characters and poring over old tomes and texts. Our combined efforts have led us to a fantastic place to start our universe, which has been agreed upon by those high at both Amazon and Games Workshop. That starting place shall for now remain a secret. Watch this space though, more to come in time. So yeah, it looks like he's going to update us when there's more news. When that's going to be, I have no idea. It could be 3 months from now, it could be 6 months. We might have to wait a year until we get another update. We just don't know at this point. But it's going to be a long time before we get the project on screen, which kind of sucks. But, you know, good things are always worth waiting for, as they say. So let's just go back over to the article and finish off here quickly. So, Warhammer 40,000 is a dark, dystopian science fiction universe set in the 41st millennium. The Imperium of Man, a totalitarian empire led by the immortal Emperor, fights to protect humanity from numerous alien races, chaos gods, and internal corruption. The galaxy is rife with war, where space marines, massive starships, and armies of alien creatures clash in a brutal conflict. It's a grim, never-ending battle for survival, where the forces of order and chaos vie for dominance, and hope is scarce. Needless to say, it has all the makings of a potentially great live-action franchise. If this is done right, this could be huge. I'm talking like Star Wars levels of popularity. If this is nailed down and it looks good and incredible, but trying to do like Space Marine armor on screen, these big hulking like juggernauts, you know, with these big clanking metal pieces of armor with the massive bolt blasters stood next to humans. I mean, having this on screen in live action without it looking janky, without it looking a bit campy and silly, I mean, you're really going to have to nail down that CGI and make it look really incredible. Are they going to go with a mix of practical and CGI effects? Is it going to be totally practical, the suit? Totally CGI? We'll have to wait and see how they kind of approach that, because the enormity of the task of making Space Marines look correct in a live action show or a movie, that's a massive task to get right, but that's something they absolutely have to nail down, because the look of the Space Marines is going to be the whole DNA of what this show is probably going to be. So nailing down that, you know, the costume designs and the kind of the aesthetic of the world, the chemistry, that's going to make people feel part of the Warhammer universe. So, but guys, there we are. I know I'm a bit late on this news. I was meant to talk about it a few days ago, but unfortunately, there was so much movie news coming out. It just got left at the bottom of the pile, so I apologize. But guys, I want to know your thoughts about this. Warhammer fans amongst you guys, I want to know your thoughts. Jump down into the comment section. Are you excited to hear about this update that we're moving forward on an Amazon Games Workshop with Henry Cavill leading the charge as a producer and starring in this huge Warhammer expansive universe? Not just the series, but movies as well. This is going to be huge. But Amazon, they have all the financial resources, money in the world to, you know, build this out and do something special with it. So I want to hear your thoughts. Guys, as always, thanks so much for being here and joining me for this episode of Review Flicks. Make sure you hit that like and become a subscriber if you haven't done so already. It goes a long way to supporting the channel, so I'd really, really appreciate that. Thanks so much, and I will see you in the next video.